Good evening. The Customs Department says it may bring a prosecution against two former directors of the Suhoi company that went into receivership last year. The company was convicted today on 59 counts of evading customs duty with potential fines of $22 million. But the judge said he was imposing only nominal fines pending the possible prosecution of the company's former principals. Michael Lynch reports.
59 summonses is a lot to bring, but originally there were twice as many against the Suhoi company. It's one of the biggest customs investigations mounted here. The Suhoi company admitted trying to defraud customs of the duty on nearly $7 million worth of imported clothing, mostly jackets, tracksuits and women's suits. The company is now in receivership and owes $18 million, including redundancy to the 200 staff laid off suddenly late last year. The receivers are still trying to get something from the Suhoi's buildings in Dunedin. And today's court case opens the way to sell off the $800,000 of clothing customers managed to seize. But the proceeds from this won't go far to settling the creditors' worries. That may have to wait until the big case Customs is considering bringing against the Suhoi principals. If it goes ahead, lawyers say it could last a month.
The courage of a bystander who gave first aid to a 5-year-old Dunedin boy fatally injured in a road accident was commended today. David Croy was presented with a certificate of commendation by the Order of St John, the first the order's made in Dunedin. Kathy Graham reports.
St John officers say they often arrive at accidents to find a crowd standing around doing nothing to help the victims. The more severe the accident, the less likely someone will step in and give vital first aid, as St John trained David Croy did.
Having taken charge of a very upsetting situation, despite the large number of unwilling bystanders that had gathered around.
Today he was honoured by the Order of St John, who arrived at the accident to find him giving first aid to the fatally injured 5-year-old.
A lot of people just don't know what to do, and a lot of people are quite repulsed by what they see and tend to stand back, and in this case Mr Croy didn't.
It was a pretty scary scene with a lot of blood about, and he showed a lot of presence of mind.
Probably to me it was very disappointing to see so many people there, and obviously been there quite a few minutes before I arrived and doing nothing.
Were you angry when you turned up and saw these people standing there watching?
Not at the time. Later on, a few hours later, I was quite upset about it, and a couple of days later thinking about it, the fact that the wee boy did die could have been saved if people had acted quicker.
So what's the lesson for the public to learn from this?
Well, I think certainly don't just say it won't ever happen to me, which is easy enough to say. There are first aid courses offered by our organisation that train people to deal with these types of emergencies, and quite obviously it could save a life.
2 prize Australian major Mitchell cockatoos have been taken from the Dunedin Botanic Gardens. It's thought thieves broke into the garden's aviary on Sunday night and stole the pair, which could fetch up to $7,000. Police are following strong leads, but say there's a chance the birds have already been taken out of the country, possibly to America. A family which lost almost all of its possessions in a house fire in Manor Place a month ago has now been ripped off. The Chandlers were lucky enough to escape from the fire with little more than the clothes they were in, but Kim Haring reports someone has now stolen family photos and even roses from the garden.
The Chandlers are not just an ordinary family, they're people who look after youngsters who've had scrapes with the law. Now they all live here at a Christian camp just out of Mosgiel. It's only temporary, but the boarders are helping pay their way by doing some renovating. How do you like living out here?
Oh, not much.
What's wrong with it?
It's too far out of town.
What about the work you have to do?
Oh, it's something to do.
Out here, that was great.
What's
Don't want to
good?
go back into town. No, that's great.
What's so good about it?
Oh, just away from town, away from old contacts, and away from the pubs.
The old Chandler House now stands empty, but vandals have chosen to ignore the signs.
In the lower floor of the house, there was a cupboard that when we moved in there, we put things like photograph albums of our children and our own wedding photographs and things like that that were just stored, that we probably wouldn't have gotten them out again for a long time, but always good to have them there. And some just bits and pieces like that, personal things. We hadn't opened that cupboard since the fire. We'd forgotten about it, really. But we went back there recently and discovered that that cupboard had been smashed in, and there was all sorts of bits and pieces from that cupboard just strewn all over the house. And that was disappointing, because it would have been great to find that treasure there and to have those sort of things just for memories.
And the garden had a special meaning to the extended family.
We had gone to the house every day, been looking after the garden, checking it out, and we had decided that we would take all the flowers that we could and rebag them ready for transfer into wherever we moved to, and we had a temporary garden to put them in. And we arranged to do that last Thursday morning. So we'd taken down our grow house and we'd had them stored in there, and they were all in planter bags, and we went back to the house to remove them, and 2/3 of them had been stolen, and that we found really disheartening. I can't imagine why people would do that in the midst of all of it. You know, to lose everything by fire seemed like enough, and we really had hoped that we could have salvaged as much of the garden as we possibly could. So it's very disappointing to think that somebody would actually do that. And if the person who did it, you know, sees this sort of program, I'd like to think that maybe they might return them, plus some.
The things the Chandlers did salvage are not of great practical use. A bridesmaid's dress and some books. What they say they need now is a microwave, a vacuum cleaner and some pots and pans.
The Otago University campus rang to the sound of the pipes today as the music department's official 1990 project got underway. It's a concert series called Dunedin's World of Music, and appropriately, the first one focused on the Scottish. Lee Bramwell was there.
Senior statesman Piper Airdrie Stewart opened the lunchtime concert with an instrument we're all familiar with. But following his performance came Evelyn Entwistle playing the oldest of Scotland's 3 national instruments, the harp. And finally, the always popular sword dance performed by Jackie Weir. Tradition has it that it's based on a battle which took place in 1054. The victor Malcolm Canmore is said to have danced in triumph over the crossed swords.
Looks good. We'll be back tomorrow night. Good night.